What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. We're your hosts, Derek and Chase. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Guys, we just had the divisional playoff round happen this last weekend. A lot of great football, a lot of great topics to discuss today. We're planning on having 3 shows this week, so there's a lot of news that we haven't gotten to in the last week. We will make sure to try to space that all out throughout the week. But this episode's really just going to be all about the playoffs and what we have seen over the last week with these teams. Let's go ahead and kind of break down these 4 games that took place this divisional weekend. The first game was the Jacksonville Jaguars, who pulled off one of the biggest upsets the previous week in playoff history against the Chargers, but were unable to seal the deal against the Kansas City Chiefs team, where Patrick Mahomes got hurt earlier in the game. The Chiefs were able to hold off and were able to advance to the AFC Conference Championship for, I believe, now the 4th year in a row, if I'm not mistaken, 5th year in a row now. The Eagles and Giants were the next one. The Eagles throttled the New York Giants this time, ending the Giants' spectacular come from behind season. But the Eagles looking as sharp as can be, winning that game 38-7. Then you had the Sunday games. The Bengals went into Buffalo, where Damar Hamlin ended up returning back to the team facility for the first time for a game. And the Bengals throttled the Bills in Buffalo with a score of 27-10. And the final game was between the Cowboys and the 49ers. Some quarterback struggles from both teams, but the 49ers proved to be the more superior team and were able to finish it out with a 19-12 win over the Cowboys. Chase, I mean, it was a fun weekend for football. I think it's safe to say that like the NFC games were not quite as fun as the AFC games. Obviously, there was a blowout and a very mediocre game between the 49ers and the Cowboys, but some of them AFC games, I mean, they were some fun ones to watch.
Yeah, they definitely were. And let's just take a second and realize that we are one game away from each conference, one game away from deciding the Super Bowl. And it seems like last week the season just started.
Yeah.
Let that sink in for a moment. The fact
So sad.
The fact that at the beginning of the season we were thinking that the Bills had Super Bowl aspirations, that the Cowboys, are going to be wishy-washy like always. And everybody thought normally like the Packers would be successful this year and make the playoffs, and the Lions would be trash. But this NFL season has had a lot to offer and a lot of mysteries, twists and turns along the way. I'm just going to go ahead and get into our first topic while we're on it, talking about the NFC playoff picture. The Cowboys played like crap. Okay. We did not see the Cowboys that were playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We saw the Cowboys that were playing against the Washington Commanders. I mean, Dak had thrown 2 interceptions. He was off his game the entire day, getting pressured. He was not running the ball that much like he normally does. Tony Pollard got a fibula fracture, so he broke his leg. And, this offense was just falling apart. And the one thing that irritates me is afterwards they talked with Jerry Jones and they're like, are you going to expect big changes after this? And he's just like, no, we're not. Like that's very concerning to me if I'm a Cowboys fan and you're not expecting big changes, not including like getting out from underneath some of these big contracts and freeing up a little bit of money or something to bring in a weapon, like a solid number 2 option for Dak, or to bring in a younger star-studded running back, or even, dare I say it, Derek, start looking at the quarterback of the future for the Dallas Cowboys, because Dak is not it at this point in time. He is not top 10. He has fallen out of the top 10 for me and for several others. He cannot win the big game when it matters. The Cowboys have had a great team for the past, 5 years. and they cannot make it out of the divisional round of the playoffs and make it to an NFC championship. They have not done it in years, and that's very concerning to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you're right. When it comes to the Cowboys, and that obviously can be the first thing. I mean, the Cowboys are a team that, this year, a lot of people really felt like had a really good chance to make it this year. Their defense was top 5. Their offense for the majority of the year really played fantastic. But, the big question of, has Dak been holding the Cowboys back? And, I mean, obviously, Dak Prescott is not the only reason for the Cowboys being held back. Clearly, it's a team game. Everyone is at blame for how it went. I mean, if anything, you can talk back to that last drive, right? Dalton Schultz really hurt them in that last drive. 2 missed opportunities where he didn't go forward out of bounds and made them have to lose about 10 seconds of clock, and wasn't able to make a simple catch on the sideline by not dragging his feet, not getting the extra yardage. It's just all those types of things. And the game management from the team was not very good at the end of the game. But like you said,
2 interceptions. That's the big key point of this game.
Yeah. Right. I'm just talking. I was just mentioning from the end of the game. I was just saying the end of the game, how it wasn't ran very well, if they even had a chance. But you're right. Dak Prescott played worse than Brock Purdy yesterday. And that's the important aspect here. You're paying Dak Prescott like a top 10 quarterback in this league. Brock Purdy is the last draft pick from this last year's draft, should not be playing better than Dak Prescott. Now, Purdy didn't play great yesterday, but Purdy also didn't make mistakes. He didn't turn the ball over, which is exactly what the 49ers need him to do. Don't force bad decisions. Allow our team to help you. Just don't hurt us. That's all they want from Brock Purdy. But it's at this point when you're talking about Dak Prescott, like you said, every time he comes into this big situation, some weeks he plays like a top 10 quarterback in the league. Some weeks you forget that he's even a good quarterback. That's the problem. The inconsistency around Dak Prescott is just a terrible, terrible thing. And it is hurting the Dallas Cowboys in a lot of ways. And like you said, with some of the contracts they got right now, I mean, they want to keep Tony Pollard on the roster, but because he's about to be a free agent, but you still got Zeke on that roster. You're still paying him $15 million a year. You can't pay Tony Pollard $10 million a year and Zeke to $15 million. You can't do that. So the problem is Jerry Jones has gotten himself into a bad situation with a lot of bad contracts with above average players.
And you got to pay CD too.
Yeah. And you got to pay CD here soon too. So, there's the possibility of losing Dalton Schultz because, Dalton Schultz is a free agent. He's going to want a decent payday. I don't know if they're going to want to franchise tag him. It'll be interesting, but yeah, Dak Prescott certainly was one of the biggest downfalls of the Cowboys yesterday. Because like you said, 2 interceptions in that game really cost them. Just wasn't good enough. He just wasn't good enough. Brock Purdy played better than him yesterday, and you're getting paid $100 million more than what Brock Purdy is right now. So you should be playing better than this.
And it irritates me how a lot of Cowboys fans want Mike McCarthy fired. I was like, Mike McCarthy didn't do anything wrong in this game whatsoever. He coached a great game plan. Dan Quinn's defense was phenomenal, holding the Niners to only 19 points and everything. And you're sitting there telling me that you're going to blame this on Dan Quinn and Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore. No, this is solely 100% Dak Prescott's fault. And I'm blaming him because when it comes down to it, you've been a veteran in this league now for damn near going on 8 years, because he got drafted in that 2016 draft. So yeah, it's been closer to 8 years. And you've been in this league now for so long. You've been to the playoffs 3 times, 4 times, whatever it may be. And the fact is that this offense so well by now, and you're still making the mental mistakes, throwing 2 interceptions that were very crucial and very costly to your team. That was the difference maker in this game, because off of those 2 turnovers, the Cowboys end up the Niners end up kicking 2 field goals off of that, and that's what decided the game right there. I mean, bottom line, point blank period, I think the Cowboys do need to start looking at a different quarterback.
And Colin, what's up, man? Good to see you. I know Colin. He and I worked together at McDonald's in Kentucky, so good to see you in here, Colin. Let's shift gears for a second. We'll get back to some of these other topics in a second here, but 2 teams lost this last weekend that really were spectacular stories this year, and that was the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New York Giants. The New York Giants, who a lot of people had a lot of question marks about what they were just going to be able to do this year. And sure enough, with a whole new offensive coaching staff, they were able to really turn a lot of heads and were able to make it to the playoffs and, upset the Minnesota Vikings in the wild card round, make it to the divisional round. A lot of people did not expect them to make it that far. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were just the number 1 overall pick last year, who were the worst team in football, then all of a sudden go out and get a new coach and a whole bunch of other things going on. And sure enough, they go on to get into the divisional round as well with a rocky ride. Some great stories here, Chase, for both of these teams, but at the end of the day, the question is, which team do you believe has a brighter future, the Jacksonville Jaguars or the New York Giants?
Okay, so let's go on record saying that I picked the Jags to win a lot this year. I said that they were going to be good. You doubted me there for a little bit, and then
of course I did. Very few people did it, right?
Like I started riding the Jags. Hold that against me. But yes, there we go. Anyway, the future is brighter for Jacksonville. I mean, you've got a guy like a head coach who has been there and done that in the Super Bowl, has been to the playoffs several times, has won it on the big stage. And you've seen it with Trevor Lawrence and the Jags this year. You saw it in the Chargers game, 4 picks, being down 27-0. Doug Peterson did not blink. He took that team down to got them to where they needed to be and was just like, listen, we need to just start piecing these moments together, start going one play at a time, and we can win. And with the contracts that they have on the roster, they signed Evan Ingram for, I think, 2 years. They signed Zay Jones for 3 years, Christian Kirk for 3 years. They've got a lot of these weapons on the roster for multiple years. But I think that the reason why I say that Jags have a brighter future is because they've got Lawrence on a rookie contract still. They've got Etienne on a rookie contract. They've got chances to build around these guys and keep going. The thing with the Giants is they're either going to have to reset that quarterback contract or they're going to have to shell out a mega deal to Daniel Jones. Now, I'm not talking about $40-50 million, but I'm talking about, the upper echelon of the 20, 28, 29, 30 million, because, after the play that he's had this year, he has shown that he's worth a second contract and worth a little bit more money. But after you pay him, you're going to have to start looking at other pieces on the roster. What can we afford? What can we not afford? What can we get rid of? I think the Jags' future is brighter just because they are able to, build more with the money that they've got in the rookie contracts. And the fact that they got Calvin Ridley coming this next offseason, that's huge for them. Like, that's a very big key component for the Jags. And the fact that that might be what they need to push them over the edge in this offense. So, yeah, I'd say the Jags' future is brighter. But I do think Daboll is going to win Coach of the Year this year.
Yeah, I mean, definitely could see that. I'm going to go with the Jags as well because, like you said, they were without potentially their best weapon. They added Calvin Ridley, and then obviously the suspension came in, and they knew that before they signed him that he wasn't going to play, but they knew that that's another weapon in a year that Trevor Lawrence is going to get, right? So the Jags have already gone out. Christian Kirk has already shown you how good he has been this year. And the Jags are just bringing in another good weapon. And at the end of the day, the reason why I give them the nod over the Giants is the Giants potentially might have the better head coach, potentially. But what you're worried about is the foundational pieces of that team right now are Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. One or two of those guys you may not have at the end of the year, right? Because they have to re-sign both of them. They're both free agents this offseason, so you have to go and get them and bring them back in. And the problem is, and that's the great beauty of the Jacksonville Jaguars, is that Trevor Lawrence is only going into his third year. He's going in with that head coach who really stabilized a lot of things for him. I think that's what Doug Peterson did the most for Trevor Lawrence, was not anything scheme-wise that made Trevor Lawrence better. I think what was good about Doug Peterson was he brought a calmness to the group of the Jacksonville Jaguars and made them believe that they could actually do something with their team. Because for so many years, the Jacksonville Jaguars have just been the laughing stock of the NFL. Even last year they were, right? So especially for your quarterback who you drafted at number 1, who people said is the greatest prospect since Andrew Luck, right? And he's had a lot of big shoes to fill. And from week 10 to the loss against the Chiefs, I could argue Trevor Lawrence was a top 5 or top 3 quarterback in the entire NFL for the span of about 2 months.
Where do you rank him now in your top 10? Like right now, without even thinking, no question.
I don't know if I'm going to put him right at 5 yet. Or in the top 5 maybe, but he's right at that fringe 6 or 7 right there already. I would say just based off of what you saw from week 10 to where the season ended, he showed you that he can play some elite football when he locks in. And I mean, I'll tell you, statistically, outside of Patty Mahomes, I don't think there was a better quarterback statistically than Trevor Lawrence.
Maybe
he had the
Joe
best
Burrow.
He had the best QBR. He had the second best completion percentage, had the 4th most touchdowns, and the fewest interceptions during that entire span. So, I mean, he was statistically, the back half of that year was better than just about every other quarterback in the NFL during that time.
Now, Derek, let me ask you a question. Did we make a mistake thinking that it was going to be Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow over the next 10 years? Did we make a mistake in not putting Lawrence in this conversation? Because honestly, I would take Lawrence, Burrow, and Mahomes over Herbert and Allen at this moment with just how he's played. I'm not saying like overall, just at this moment, I would take Lawrence over both of them.
Well, and yeah, I would, I definitely Burrow and Mahomes right now. Lawrence, I'd have to question over Allen, but Lawrence is right there in that fold. When, you were talking about Herbert, I question like how the offensive minds worked for him. Again, Justin Herbert had a lot to deal with this year, a lot of offensive line problems, a lot of receivers missing for the majority of the year. Obviously, their entire offensive staff just got fired. So, there's question marks about, Justin Herbert can be in the mix of any of those guys.
Oh, absolutely.
But from that perspective, Lawrence in this moment, when you talk about last year, you couldn't say that. But after what we just saw from Trevor Lawrence with Doug Peterson, if they can continue to progress Trevor Lawrence, then Trevor Lawrence is now in that mold of the top 5 young best quarterbacks in the AFC and all of the NFL, really, because Trevor Lawrence has really shown you a different side of him this year, really, and especially from what we saw earlier in the year. I mean, he was struggling for a lot of it, but yet like I said, that back half of the season, I mean, they were winning games because of Trevor Lawrence, which is how it's supposed to be. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be. Your quarterback's supposed to help win you games, not lose you games, win games. And they were winning games because of Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, the 5-touchdown game against the Cowboys, the 4 touchdowns against the Chargers. Like, after he was the one that was losing you the game, he was the one that came back and won this game. And I think that matchup, that pairing him with Doug Peterson, a solid veteran coach in this league who's played the quarterback position, who has, molded some great minds, been on the elite stage and has been there. Pairing him with Trevor Lawrence after the disaster of the Urban Meyer situation that you have, it's fantastic. And like we said, he doesn't even have his best weapon yet in Calvin Ridley. And just imagine what this team's future is like when you pair them two up. And Derek, we would be talking a Jags Bengals AFC Championship game if it was not for that fumble that one Jags player had, because that was 17-10 at that point in time on the 20-yard line that he fumbled. And if the Jags scored 17-7, and by the final score, it probably would have been 31 or 32-27 Jags. And we would have been talking about how Mahomes lost his first divisional round playoff game. We would have been talking can the Jags go all the way? We would be talking about Burrow and Lawrence instead of Burrow and Mahomes. Like, let that sink in. Like, this future is very, very bright for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And as a Colts fan, Derek, you should be scared.
Which is why I've been so adamant on the Colts getting the right quarterback for themselves in this draft. Because, I mean, it's very important, especially with how loaded the AFC is with quarterbacks. I mean, almost every AFC quarterback or every AFC team has their quarterback of the future, almost every single one. So, and a lot of them are elite. So, you gotta find somebody that can work with you. But yeah, the Jags were a great story. Giants were too, but clearly we think the Jags are in a better situation for the future. Now we kind of go, man. Okay, so let's kind of go into, speaking of the Patrick Mahomes injury, we alluded to it a few times that, Patrick Mahomes had his ankle rolled up in that game against the Jags. It's a high ankle sprain. They said that he's going to tough it out and he's just going to play with it. I mean, Chase, you and I understand how high ankle sprain works. Clearly it won't keep you out of a game if you don't let it, but it definitely is a pain to deal with. And, with what we know with the Kansas City Chiefs and their struggles against the Bengals, who they're now going to host again. How confident are you in Mahomes to, battle against this Bengals team being hobbled like he is now?
I don't put anything past Mahomes. I mean, we've seen the best of Patrick Mahomes. We've seen him do one-arm throws. We saw earlier this year against the Broncos where he was running towards the sidelines and then just sidearms it to Jerick McKinnon for a 30-yard touchdown. So nothing surprises me with the way that Mahomes plays. Yeah, a high ankle sprain is anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, but knowing the kind of technology that they got, the doctors that they got, they're probably gonna do some cryogenics, make sure it's really iced up, and they're going to tape it up really well. He's going to go out there and he's going to play through it. And especially if, a trip to the Super Bowl is on the line. And kind of like what Burrow did with the Browns, you can only lose to one team so many times before the other team finally gets their number. And I think that now that the Chiefs have lost to Burrow 3 times in a row, I think that the Chiefs are going to come out here with a great game plan, try to get some vengeance on the Bengals, and try to make it to their 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years and potentially win another one. So, honestly, I think this might hinder Mahomes a little bit, but he's going to do whatever it takes for them to win and come out on top. So, I don't put anything past Mahomes and the Chiefs, and the fact that you doubted him earlier in the season and you put Allen over him for 2 weeks was ridiculous, but I digress.
Well, okay. Well, that was before. Okay. Now I clearly understand that Josh Allen is not in the same category. Okay. I'm allowed to make decisions. I'm allowed to make choices, and then I'm allowed to fix those once I get new information, Chase. Okay. So, but obviously with Patrick Mahomes, I mean, Mahomes part of his game is running with the football. I mean, his ability to elude the pocket when pressure's coming and make throws on the run. You're not going to see that this weekend with the way that ankle is. I mean, that's a bad injury to have. High ankle sprains are no joke. They are very painful. And I don't care how much you tape that thing, that sucker's still going to be very tender, and he is definitely going to be hurting when he's on that leg. But of course, like you said, the Super Bowl chances are on the line. So you have to just tough it out. And if you can somehow pull out the win, then, you get 2 weeks to rest it. And then it would be about, 70-75% better by the time they get to the Super Bowl, and that would probably be enough. But it does have me worried, when it comes to Patrick Mahomes, and we can kind of talk about this now. Well, let's talk about a different matchup. We've talked a little bit about the Bengals and how Patrick Mahomes is going to have to attack them. Talking about the 49ers and the Eagles. It's Brock Purdy versus Jalen Hurts, Chase. Two teams that have very similar stories, but different stories when it comes to the quarterback. You have two amazingly good defenses, two great offensive lines, two great offensive-minded schemes and how they approach. But the common denominator that you have going back to this game is you got a rookie quarterback versus, still a young quarterback, but a guy that's been around the league a little longer and is more comfortable in his system right now. Brock Purdy versus Jalen Hurts, man. I mean, I feel like I already know the direction you're going to go in this way, but how do we compare these two quarterbacks and what they're going to be able to do against their respective opponents?
I mean, we saw this matchup. Isaiah, don't be too sure about that. I mean, come on now. I'll explain.
We've seen even the Eagles play against really good defenses and struggle offensively. There's been a lot of times they've struggled. But they scored 17 on the Colts, remind you.
Yeah, but here's the thing that's got it played in. Jalen Hurts has been also resting for 2 or 3 weeks now. He played the last game of the season, but they sat him after 2 quarters. But we saw this Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts matchup back when they were in college. Iowa State versus Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts came out on top by 1 point. Now we get to see it again. And this will be the 49ers and Brock Purdy's best defense that they've played so far, like towards the latter half of the season. They haven't played anybody good during the regular season that's had a good defense. They came in and played the Seahawks, and then they played the Cowboys, who have a pretty decent defense, and you saw how badly Purdy was struggling against that team. And, we're talking about a secondary for the Cowboys that is diminished with just Trevon Diggs and a, slightly lesser version of himself in Malik Hooker than what he used to be. And you're going to face up against guys like Jordan Davis, Ndamukong Suh, Fletcher Cox, Derek Barnett, Nakobe Dean, James Bradbury, Darius Slay. The list goes on and on with the defensive talent that they got. Mm-hmm. And not to mention with the offensive level that Jalen Hurts is playing at, he's playing out of his mind when it comes to the way that they're playing. So a rookie quarterback has never made it all the way, and I will be glad to admit when I'm wrong if Brock Purdy ends up taking the Niners all the way to the Super Bowl and potentially winning it. But I just think that this will be the toughest challenge that the Niners have, and I think that the Eagles are going to win. It's going to be a very, very close matchup, but I think that the Eagles are going to come out on top and win by 7 or 10 points.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, these two teams are very similar in how they play because, like I said, the offensive minds of both of these teams, Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers, Nick Sirianni with the Eagles. Two insanely great offensive masterminds knowing how to pick apart defenses. When you look at the defenses for both of these teams, the 49ers, I mean, again, they got the best edge rusher this season in Nick Bosa out there playing, and you're always pointing a direction at him. You are always making sure he is double teamed, because the last person that you ever want to have to deal with is Nick Bosa. And that defense, I mean, what DeMeco Ryans has done with that defense this year has just been incredible. They are aggressive. They don't wait for you. They don't wait back and let you play your game. They force you to work around them. And that's the one thing that I question if the Eagles are going to be able to figure that out, because we've seen a lot of times where they face some good defenses and they struggle early. They figure it out sometimes down the road, but early in games, when defenses start getting aggressive on them, they're slow to adjust right off the bat. And it makes me wonder, just how good is Jalen Hurts going to play? But clearly what we saw against the Giants, I feel like it kind of clouds a few people's judgment on just how good he'll play against the 49ers. But then again, when we talk on the other side of things, right? This Eagles defense, I mean, it's incredible, Chase, because earlier in the year, the Eagles had the number one pass defense in all of the NFL, and they still do, because what they have, like you said, with being able to get pressure, but the secondary for the Eagles is unbelievably good. Darius Slay, an all-pro. James Bradbury playing like an all-pro. CJ Gardner-Johnson playing like an all-pro. Their entire secondary is playing like all-pros this year. And then not only that, earlier in the year, they were mid-tier when it came to stopping the run. They added Ndamukong Suh in the mix because Jordan Davis was hurt, and then sure enough, their rushing defense got better. Now it's top 10. So, honestly, you could argue their defense might actually be better than the 49ers at this moment. When you look at the
Jerry
full
Tillery
package.
Too?
What's up?
Didn't they add Jerry Tillery too?
Yeah. It's incredible the job that they have done fixing up that defense and making it elite everywhere. And that's the big question mark when you're talking about Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy has played some decent defenses and he's been average. Unfortunately for this game, Brock Purdy's going to have to be a little better than average for this game. Now, I believe that they have enough offensive talent to work around the Eagles a little bit, because they're also aggressive in how they attack it. They're going to run the football on the Eagles. They are not afraid to do so. But you can't throw for 200 yards, only complete 60% of your passes, and not throw for a touchdown. I mean, you can't do that. You're going to have to make plays for your team in order to be able to win this game. So, it's 100% going to be a defensive game. I mean,
100%.
It's going to be, I firmly believe that it's going to be under 45 points for this game.
It'll probably be, the final score will probably be, no joke, 17-10, because
probably something like that. Wouldn't be shocked. But yeah, so Jalen Hurts, I'll take him over Purdy right now, just because I know Jalen Hurts is going to make a few more plays. We'll just see how dialed in they are when it comes to. We'll just see how dialed in they are when it comes to Shanahan's bag. We'll see what he can do. But before we get into our favorites to win the rest of the way, let's see. We need to talk a little bit about Buffalo Bills. We have to talk about Josh Allen, and we need to talk about Stephon Diggs. So the Bills lost to the Bengals this last weekend. Like you said at the top of the show, Chase, the Bills, it felt like from the get-go, the Bills were the clear favorite to win it all. They were destroying teams. They looked unstoppable. They just looked like the best team on the planet, and there was no one that could stand in their way. And then, they faced the Bengals, and apparently they just forgot how to play football all of a sudden. And Josh Allen was a big part of that. There's a lot of times Josh Allen looked lost. Josh Allen couldn't make a few throws. And, there was a few times where some tempers flared up. So I think we kind of talked about it earlier, but is Josh Allen starting to lose some of the hype following the Bengals loss? Because we keep talking about some of these other quarterbacks. The Bills didn't progress in where they wanted to go. They regressed.
Isaiah, I'll touch on a couple things here, and you may disagree, but just keep an open mind about it. But there's 3 people to blame for this Bills loss. Josh Allen takes the brunt of the blame. Ken Dorsey takes a good chunk of it as well. And then the Bills front office for not getting a solid number 2 option opposite of Stefon Diggs and getting a premier running back for the Buffalo Bills to use, because you've got to establish a run game if you are going to win football games. You cannot rely on Josh Allen the entire season. And I think that you're right. The Buffalo Bills took off and were demolishing teams left and right to start the season. I think about week 6 or week 7 is when we started seeing a massive decline of the way that the Bills were playing. And that's for 2 reasons. One, Ken Dorsey changed up the playbook and stopped playing like he used to. And 2, we heard that Josh Allen had the same injury that baseball players get, and that's Tommy John elbow. Most of them have a 18-month recovery after they get their Tommy John surgery. And how much of that was lingering with Josh Allen all season long? How much of that elbow issue was really hurting him throughout the entire season, and including playoffs? Because I feel like we did not see the best of Josh Allen because of that injury sustained to his throwing elbow. But I also think that ever since Brian Daboll left, we have seen a decline in the performance of the way this team is played. Yes. Now, granted, you got guys like Stefon Diggs. You got a decent tight end in Dawson Knox. You've got Devin Singletary. You've got Gabe Davis. Now, Gabe Davis was solidifying himself as a number 2 option for this team. I've fallen off of that. I really, really think that you need to get somebody else in there opposite of Diggs. You need to, get a new play caller in there for Josh Allen, and you need to solidify this run game, because if you look at every other team that has a good run game, the 49ers, the Eagles have a good run game going right now. The Bengals have a good run game with Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine, and even the Chiefs with Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon are doing really well running the ball. And you got guys like Devin Singletary and James Cook that are, trying to do good running. It's not going to happen. And with the latest news that came out with the Bills, Stefon Diggs looks like he is frustrated with the way that Josh Allen is playing and the way that he only got 2 targets in the red zone last game and in the Miami Dolphins game. And he was frustrated not being utilized and getting usage out of him. Have we seen the last of Stefon Diggs in a Bills uniform? I don't know. But what I do know is you need to have those 3 things happen in order for Josh Allen to be successful next season, because we're not going to see it if, some things don't change.
Well, Josh Allen absolutely has lost his place as potential quarterback number 2. I think that you could almost even move him out of the top 3 almost.
Who would go above him?
You can have a couple different arguments. Just from a consistency standpoint, I think that's the biggest point. Here's the thing. I disagree with you on the number 2 wide receiver thing. I think Gabe Davis is a very solid number 2, and Dawson Knox at a tight end is a very solid piece. I agree with you on the Ken Dorsey thing. I think the scheme in which they attacked the Bengals was not good. I think that this year they ran the football better than they ever have with Josh Allen coming onto the football team. So I don't think the run game was a huge issue. I think the problem was obviously the defense for the Bengals. I think as of recently has really stepped up and has elevated themselves to a level that they can start forcing a lot of turnovers and forcing teams to make a lot of mistakes. And I think Ken Dorsey did not come in with a very good game plan to attack the weaknesses, which is the corners of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I just think that they weren't ready. They didn't figure it out. And Josh Allen, it has to take a lot of the blame for it because, like you said, Stephon Diggs didn't look happy because at the end of the game, when they had a chance to get a touchdown to try to, keep themselves in the game, Josh Allen missed Stephon Diggs on the other side of the field when he was wide open. There's just a lot of things going on in Buffalo right now. And, this was Buffalo's year. Everyone kept talking. They made a rule change in honor of the fact that the Buffalo Bills felt like they got screwed and they regressed. So, you went from people saying that the Bills probably should have had another shot to now you just got blown out in your own home stadium with your player coming back who is the biggest motivational factor that you could have possibly ever had for a team, coming back from dying on a football field and coming back, being in the building in front of your entire home crowd in the snow, your weather, everything could have went perfectly for you. And you did, and you blew it. That was not a good Bills team that we saw Sunday. All of it, they were not a good Bills team. It's just not the regular Bills team that we're used to seeing. And it's not all on Josh Allen. Gabe Davis dropped a bunch of passes in that game that, could have altered the face of the game had, he done that. And I think even Stephon Diggs dropped a 50-yard pass early in the game that would have got him a touchdown had he just caught it, but he didn't. So, these players need to step up. And that's been a huge issue for the Bills. But going off of that, you mentioned it with Stephon Diggs. I don't remember who it was. I think it was running back Duke Johnson.
Yeah.
That said that he was with Stephon Diggs when they went into the locker room, and Diggs grabbed his stuff really quickly and just left. Didn't even bother to wait around, talk to anybody, nothing. He just left. Apparently he left before even some of the coaches even had a chance to get back into the locker room. A lot of people there's way too much speculation, Chase. Clearly he was insanely upset. I'm sure just like a lot of people in Buffalo, he thought this was the year to do it because, Stephon Diggs is that kind of guy. But people are wondering what his feelings are about Buffalo. Cause you don't just hightail it out of a stadium like that if you're not insanely pissed about how things are being ran in there.
Here's the dream offseason scenario for the Buffalo Bills. Okay. Fire Ken Dorsey and get a new offensive coordinator. Pick up a good elite running back in this offseason. You got a lot of great ones that are free agents. Tony Pollard's a free agent. Kareem Hunt's a free agent. Saquon Barkley's a free agent. You can pick up any one of them three guys and, build from the ground up. Jordan Poyer has been getting injured. Matt Milano has been getting injured. Micah Hyde's been getting injured. I'd say get rid of Jordan Poyer. Go out and pick up Jesse Bates in free agency to free up that to shore up that safety spot. And then fix your offensive line. Your offensive line also was a big issue for the Buffalo Bills. If he does not re-sign with the Philadelphia Eagles, Jason Kelce would be a great matchup for Josh Allen in Buffalo, pairing him on that offensive line. Or if you don't want to go with the route of picking up a free agent running back, go out and draft Bijan Robinson, for crying out loud. Give some more help to Josh and, just get a new offensive scheme put in place with this, because yes, you're right. The defense fumbled the bag. Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis fumbled the bag. But I'm telling you what, the offensive planning that they had was not great for the Bengals. You said attack their secondary because that's their weakest point, and yet they made them look like it was their strength, shutting down Diggs most of the game, not looking towards him in the red zone, not taking the check down instead of trying to go air it out 30, 40 yards down the field. Like, there was a lot of mistakes made, and I think most of it has to do with the offensive side of the ball more than the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, definitely some things need to change for the Buffalo Bills. Okay, so last thing we'll talk about before we end up calling it for this stream, which we'll have another one tomorrow. Who is your favorite right at this moment, Chase, to win it all right now?
Kansas City.
Really?
I'd say Kansas City because, like I said earlier, it's tough because when you got the Bengals playing as well as they are, you've got the Eagles playing as well as they are. The Niners are playing phenomenal. It's hard to go against Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. We've seen the Bengals beat them 3 times in a row, dating back to the last playoffs, the regular season, and a couple other times, or one other time before that. But with the way that the Chiefs have been playing, the way Patrick Mahomes has been playing without, a true number one weapon, and this Chiefs offense is looking phenomenal, I think that they have the talent and the potential to go all the way. And part of the reason why is number 15 himself. I mean, it's hard to go against him. It's hard to doubt him. And frankly, I think if he makes it on the big stage, I said it earlier in the season, it was going to be Chiefs and Eagles. And I said it midway through the season, it was going to be Chiefs and Eagles. And I'm sticking to that, Chiefs and Eagles in the Super Bowl. And I think that Patrick Mahomes outduels Jalen Hurts, and Andy Reid outcoaches Nick Sirianni, and the Chiefs win their second Super Bowl in 5 years. So I'm going Chiefs.
Okay. I'm going to go with their opponent, the Cincinnati Bengals. Here's the thing. So I agree with you. I think the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. I think they're a more complete team. But here's the thing. I do have question marks about the Kansas City Chiefs going into this game. You were in this same situation last year. Roster wise, you had a way better team last year than what you do this year. Because you had Tyreek Hill last year, who was a top 10 wide receiver in this league by a long shot, and you couldn't get the job done then. And what we're seeing now with the Cincinnati Bengals, with how they are playing on all levels, should scare everyone, because Callahan has that offense running the show like he knows what the hell he is doing. And that defense playing lights out right now. The Kansas City Chiefs, you played the Jaguars this last week. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is injured. I question that. I wonder whether or not I think that's going to hurt his performance for sure. So I think that he is going to not be the best version of himself. And I think they're going to figure it out.
There's 2 things that I factor in with this. Okay. One is the Chiefs defense is a downgrade from last year, because you've lost, a lot of you lost a lot of key pieces, including Tyrann Mathieu. But the thing that they're doing a lot better this year than they were last year is utilizing their running backs and relying more on the run game than what they were last year. And I think that Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon are 2 big factors that are going to be playing into this, especially with Mahomes being slightly injured. Even if you get a Mahomes at like 35, 40, even 50%, that's still better than a Chad Henne that's going to be playing. And I think that the Chiefs are going to try to exercise their demons and get the Bengals off their back and finally go over the hump and win against them. And I think that's the one thing that they're playing for, is try to get them out of the way. Now, granted, if the Bengals do make it, I still think the Eagles are going to win just because of that banged up O-line for the Bengals. And we saw what happened last year when they had a banged up O-line. But man, if the Bengals O-line's healthy, I don't think there's anybody stopping them.
I mean, we saw them go into Buffalo with that banged up offensive line. They were dominant against a way better front in the Buffalo Bills.
Way better.
That Buffalo Bills front as a whole is better than the Kansas City Chiefs. They had 3 missing offensive linemen, and they bullied them. They ran for almost 200 yards against the Bills. Nobody does that. That just doesn't happen. Not against that defense. They are running the ball effectively. Joe Burrow, if Joe Burrow beats Kansas City again in Kansas City, Chase, you got an argument for Joe Burrow being the best quarterback in the NFL, even ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Say, as great and as amazing as Patrick Mahomes has been, the last few times he's been around this ring, it's not worked out for him. He lost in the Super Bowl. He ended up losing in the AFC Championship game to Cincinnati. He hasn't beaten Cincinnati. And if he loses again in the AFC Championship game again to Joe Burrow and the Bengals, Joe Burrow might have the argument to be the best quarterback in the NFL right now.
I mean, but you're also going into this with Mahomes injured as well. So like if they lose, like you're going to be sitting there like, okay, did they really lose to the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes?
Depends on how they lose. Because does Patrick Mahomes play bad? Does Patrick Mahomes play good? I don't know. But one way or the other, you're going to end up seeing, which quarterback it is. But right now, Joe Burrow's playing with a whole bunch of charisma. That team knows who they are. They just have a swagger about them that is just unbreakable. And I just think that whatever team they come into right now, I think they truly believe that they are the best team in the NFL, and they were this close to pulling it off last year. And I think they're going to do it this year. I think they have the opportunity.
I mean, even if you make it to the Super Bowl, you still got to face the Eagles in that front seven, and that front seven is way better than the Buffalo Bills. Way better than the Buffalo Bills. And if you got an injured offensive line,
way better. It's better. It's not way better.
Are you kidding me? You've got Ed Oliver and
they played they already know what it's like to play an elite front seven. They played the Rams in the Super Bowl.
You got Greg Rousseau and Ed Oliver compared to Ndamukong Suh, Jordan Davis, Garrett Barnett, and Nakobe Dean. Like, that's a lot better front seven.
You're missing one guy in there, and that's Hassan Reddick, who actually was second in the NFL in sacks this year.
Even still, like Hassan Reddick added on to that. Like, the Bills were without Von Miller. If Von Miller was there, I'd say yes, they're about the same. But like, the Eagles have a way better front seven than the Buffalo Bills at this moment in time. Their linebacker core, their defensive line, and their secondary is all better than the Buffalo Bills at this point in time.
Oh, I agree. I just think that when it comes to how the Bengals are attacking teams, I think they attack teams much better with their weaknesses. I think the Bengals are a team that does a much better job of attacking teams quickly. They're very up-tempo. I don't think a lot of defenses are capable of handling that kind of pressure. Now, they may have to change it for if they want to play against the Eagles in even the 49ers or the Eagles, one or the other, whichever team ends up making it in the NFC, that definitely is going to be a challenge because both of those teams are aggressive. But I think that the Bengals, just how they're playing right now, is just overall as a whole unit is playing at the most complete level of all the teams. So I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, you said the Chiefs. We'll just have to see. We'll see if Kansas City, if Kansas City finally gets over the hump, or if, the Cincinnati Bengals continue their win streak with against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I know. I can't wait. And also Hassan Reddick was tied for second in the league in sacks.
Tied for second. Whatever. It's not that much. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one, guys. This is the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. Be sure to check us out tomorrow as we go live talking about coaching candidates and a bunch of other things going on around the league. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.
Junie says bye.
Bye, Junie.